Hello children, how are you? We are going to study reproduction in plants and animals. Already we studied one part as reproduction in plants and animals, vegetative reproduction, asexual reproduction, studied yes. Now we are going to study pollination. Yes, we are going to study pollination. Pollination. What is pollination? What is pollination? Transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of a flower. Transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma of a flower is called pollination. Okay. Pollination means what? Transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of a flower. Any other flower or the same flower. Like, okay. Pollination means transfer of pollen grains. Okay. What are the importance of pollination? Importance. Importance of pollination. First one is it result in fertilization. Result in fertilization, which lead to formation of fruits and seed. Fruit formation and seed formation. Okay. Pollination result fertilization. It leads to formation of fruits and seed. Next, new variety of plants are formed. New variety of plants are formed through new combination of genes in case of cross pollination. New variety of plants are formed through new combination of genes in the case of cross pollination. Cross pollination. Types of pollination, two types. One is self-pollination, cross-pollination. Self-pollination, cross-pollination. Now we have to see what is self-pollination. What is self-pollination? Self-pollination is also known as autogamy, transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower born on the same plant is known as self-pollination. Self-pollination means transfer of pollen grain from the anther to stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant. Same plant. Okay, that is self-pollination. Self transfer of pollen grain from the anther to stigma of same flower, otherwise same plant of flower. Okay, see the picture everybody. Everybody see the picture. Stigma, stigma. See the picture stigma. Anther is there. The anther is going inside the stigma, the same flower. Another picture you see. Flower only different. Anther, the pollen grain is going from the one flower to another flower of the same plant. Okay, this is called self-pollination. Self-pollination. Okay, what is self-pollination? Understood everybody? Transfer of pollen grain from the anther to stigma of same flower. Okay, example hibiscus. Example hibiscus. Hibiscus. Example hibiscus. Okay, now advantages of self-pollination. What is the advantages of self-pollination? Self-pollination is possible in certain bisexual flower. Bisexual flower. Hibiscus is a bisexual flower. You see the picture? Can cut that one. That we can see the two part. It is a bisexual flower. Flower do not depend on agent for pollination. No agent. No agent. Do not depend on agent for pollination. Here automatically falling down. The flower, the pollen grain going inside the stigma. But no insect, no water, no any agent no need, no, not need. Okay, do not depend on agent. Do not depend on agent for this self-pollination. There is no wastage of pollen grain. Here no wastage. Directly going here, not falling any other place. So no wastage. Wastage of pollen grain. What are the disadvantages? Advantages 3. Possible in certain bisexual flower. Do not depend on agent for self-pollination. There is no wastage of pollen grain. This is a advantages of self-pollination. Now we will see disadvantages of self-pollination. The seeds are less in number. Seeds are less in number. Very less number of seeds only we will get. The endosperm is minute. Therefore, the seeds produce weak plant. Endosperm is minute. So, the seed produce weak plant only. Self-pollination disadvantages it is. Because the weak plant only we will get. New varieties of plants cannot be produced. New variety plant cannot be produced. Same flower, same pollen grain coming into the stigma. That very weak plant we will get. Other new variety we can't get. Okay, new variety of plants cannot be produced. Okay, it disadvantages more. Yes, so self-pollination make more disadvantages. So cross-pollination is good. Yes, new variety of plants will get. Okay, now we will see cross-pollination. What is cross-pollination? Cross-pollination is a transfer of pollen grain from the anther of one flower to stigma of another flower of the same kind. See the picture everybody. Same kind of flower or same kind of flower. The pollen grain coming from the another flower to that another kind of same kind of flower, that is another flower, not the same plant, not the same flower. It is transfer of pollen grain from anther of one flower to stigma of another flower the same kind. So it is called cross pollination. Cross pollination. Cross pollination from one flower to another flower. Transfer of pollen from one flower to another flower. Another flower. Okay. That example apples, grapes, etc. Okay. Apple, grapes, etc. Okay. Here some advantages of cross pollination. Some advantages also there. Some disadvantages also there. Okay, what are the advantages Cross pollination, what are the advantages? The seeds produced as a result of cross pollination develop and germinate properly and grow into better plant. Here, grow into better plant. Seed produced as a result of a cross pollination develop and germinate properly. Germinate properly. Develop and germinate properly and grow into better plant. That is, cross pollination leads to the production of new varieties of plants. New variety of plants we will get. Okay, it's very important one. New variety of plants will get. Okay, leads to production of new varieties. Cross pollination leads to the production of new varieties. It is very important one. Next one, more viable seeds are produced. More viable seeds. That self-pollination seeds are less in number. Here, seeds are more in number. Seeds are more in number. More viable seeds are produced. Okay. Very important advantages are in cross-pollination. One is developing good variety, new variety of plants, and the seeds are produced viable. More viable seeds are used. Disadvantages: pollination may fail due to distance barrier from one flower to another flower. Distance barrier is there. More wastage of pollen grains. More wastage. It may introduce some unwanted characters. Flowers depend on the external agencies for pollination. Here external agency want butterfly, housefly, some animals, some birds, that like some agency want. Otherwise through water, through wind, that like some agencies want. External agency. Okay. Some this is also disadvantages. Okay. Next one, we have agents of cross pollination. Agents of cross pollination. In order to bring about cross pollination, it is necessary that the pollen should be carried from one flower to another different flower. One flower to another of a different flower. This takes place through the agency of animals. Insects, wind, water. Insects, wind, water. Now, pollination by wind. First, we will see the pollination by wind. Wind pollinated flower. Pollination by wind. That pollination with the help of wind is called anemophily. 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 What is anemophily? Pollination with the help of wind is called anemophily. Anemophily. The anemophilous flowers produce enormous amount of pollen grains. The pollen grain are small, smooth, dry, and light in weight. Pollen grain small, smooth, dry, and light in weight. Pollen of such plants are blown of a distance of more than 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer from one place to another place. One flower is in one place, another flower is 1 kilometer far away. That also the wind taking and going to give to the pollen grain. Okay, the stigma are apparently large, protruding, and sometimes hairy to trap pollen grains. That means the pollen grain from one place to another place going. That the stigma are comparatively large. Stigma always large stigma. Okay. Anther are, see the picture everybody see the picture. Anthers are exposed to the wind so that pollen can easily be blown away. Easily blown away. Exposed. Anthers are exposed to the wind. So that easily blown away. Stigma. Stigma are feathery to catch pollen carried on wind. Stigma are feathery to catch pollen carried on wind. No scent or no nectary. No nectar, no scent, no smell. Petals are small and green as there no need to attract insect. There no insect attracting because this pollen through the wind, going through the wind. Pollen grains are very small and light. They occur in very large numbers. They occur in very large number. Yes. So wind pollinated flower different in structure. The wind pollinated flower structure also different. Anther are exposed. Stigma are feathery. No scent, no nectar. No scent, no nectar. Petal are small and green. No need to attract insect. Pollen are very small and light. They occur in very large numbers. So the structure, different structure. Flowers are different in structure because they do not have attract insect to them, but do not do need to be exposed to the wind. Need to be exposed to the wind. Okay. Yes. Have you understood? Wind pollinated flower are different in structure because they do not have attract insect to them, but to need to expose to wind. Okay. So pollination, other name is anaphyly. Wind pollination. Pollination with the help of wind is called anemophily. 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 That example, grasses and some cacti. Grasses and some cacti. Okay, we understand. Next one, pollination by insects. Pollination by insects. Pollination with help of insects like honeybees, butterflies are called entomophily. 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 Pollination by insects like honeybee are called entomophily. To attract insects, these flowers are brightly colored, have smell and nectar. Color also bright color to attract insect. These flowers are brightly colored, have smell and nectar. The pollen grains are larger in size. The pollen grains are larger in size. The exine is pitted, spiny, etc. They they can be adhered firmly a sticky stigma. Approximately 80% of pollination done by insects is carried by the bees. 80% of 80% of pollination done by insects. 80% of pollination done by insects. Insects. Insects means honeybee also more. Okay, honeybee. So pollination with the help of insect, that is called entomophily. What is entomophily? Pollination with the help of insects like honeybees. Flies are called entomophily. Entomophily. Okay. Among insect pollinated angiosperm, the most numerous groups are those pollinated by bees. That flowering plants. Flowering plant. It is angiosperm. Like most insect, bees initially locate food by odor and then orientate themselves on the flower of group of flowers by shape, color, and texture. These flowers attracted by insect. Flowers attracted by insect. One is brightly colored, bright color flower, and good smell, very good smell, and nectar is also there. So nectar is also there. So honeybee going and taking the nectar and eating one flower to another flower, going and eating that, like the pollen grain going through the insects, through the insects. Okay, it is pollination by insect. Pollination by insect called entomophily. Entomophily. Pollination by insect is called entomophily. See the picture. Yes, everybody know, everybody saw this one. Yes, some insect sitting on the flower taking the honey and go and eating and taking and going. See the other flower, that like one pollen grain take from one flower to another flower. It is pollination by insects. Okay, children. Next one, next one, pollination by water. Hydrophily. Hydrophily. Hydrophily is referred to the pollination brought about by water. It is two types. Hydrophily, two types. Everybody see the picture. Hydrophily, two types. Ephytophily. Ephytophily, pollination occurring on the water surface. Lotus like this. Yes, lotus, you know. Yellows, hydrilla, that all plants. Ephytophily, pollination occurring on the water surface, occurring on the water surface. Okay, lotus, hydrilla like this. Hydrophily, pollination occurring beneath the water surface, beneath the water surface. It is Najas certophyllum, Najas certophyllum. The pollen grain, the plant is inside the water, plant is inside the water. The pollen grain going to the water from one flower to another flower, otherwise same flower, male flower to female flower, that like hydrophily. Okay, it is called hydrophily. See the picture, hydrophily. Yes, ephytophily, that is a pollination occurring on the surface of flower. On the surface of flower, example, Elotes hydrilla. Hydrophily, pollination occurring beneath the water surface. That is called hydrophily. Hydrophily is inside the water. Plants are inside the water. Male flower and flower, female flowers are there. That the male flower pollen grain and go into the female flower stigma and make a pollination. That is called hydrophily. Pollen grain produced in large numbers. Pollen grains float on surface of water till they land on the stigma of female flower. Hydrilla, vaccinaria, that all. Okay, Hydrilla, vaccinaria. Pollination by the help of water, that is called hydrophily. Next one, pollination by animals, zoophily. That is zoophily, that pollination takes place with the help of animal, that is called zoophily. Flowers such as plant attract animals by their bright color, size, scent. Example, some sunbird pollinate flowers of canna, gladioli, etc. Squirrel pollinate flowers of silk cotton tree. Now we have to see fertilization in plants. Everybody see the picture. Fertilization in plants. Process of fertilization. Yes. Now everybody see the pollen grain. This is a stigma of the female part. Pollen grain sitting on the stigma. After that one going inside. Yes, yellow color. Pollen tube. Like a tube. After that going inside the microphyll, enter into the egg. Enter into the egg. So the pollen grain going into the egg. Going into the egg. Everybody see the picture. Pollen grain, style, pollen tube, antipodals, embryo sac, secondary nucleus, synergies, male gamete, microphyll, integuments, eggs, embryo sac. Okay, these are the parts of the process of fertilization. Okay, now everybody see pollen grain reach the right stigma and begin to germinate. Begin to germinate. Pollen grain reach the right stigma and begin to germinate. That one going inside the microphyll, enter into the secondary nucleus of the egg. After pollen forms a small tube-like structure called pollen tube. Everybody see pollen tube. Pollen is sitting on the stigma after making the pollen tube. After making the pollen tube-like structure, that is a pollen tube which emerges through the germ pores. The content of pollen grain move into the tube. After the pollen is going inside the tube, the pollen tube grows through the tissue of stigma and style and finally reaches the ovule through the microphyll. After the ovule that going inside, the pollen tube grow through the tissues of stigma and style and finally reaches the ovule through the microphyll. Pollen grain going inside the. So that now the pollen grains enter into the microphyll. Vegetative cell degenerates and generative cells divides to form two sperm. That means male gametes. Vegetative cell degenerates and generative cell divides into two sperms. The tip of pollen tube bursts and the two sperms enter into the embryo sac. The pollen tube will burst. Going near the egg, pollen tube burst. That burst means the pollen grain is inside the pollen tube. That won't enter into the egg. Okay. Tip of pollen tube burst and two sperms enter the embryo sac. Embryo sac. One sperm fuses with the egg. One sperm fuses with the egg, and other diploid zygote form diploid zygote. Other sperm fuses with the secondary nucleus, triple fusion, to form primary endosperm nucleus. It is triploid in nature. Triploid in nature, since two type of fusion, syngamy and triple fusion, and double fertilization. Here, syngamy, first fertilization, and triple fusion takes place. The embryo, that process is double fertilization. Double fertilization. After triple fusion, primary endosperm nucleus develop into endosperm. After triple fusion, primary endosperm nucleus develop into endosperm. Endosperm provides food to the developing embryo. Endosperm provides food to developing embryo. Food to provides food. Endosperm provides food to the developing embryo. Later, the synergids and antipodal cells degenerate. Synergid, antipodal cells. See the picture? Synergids, antipodal cells. That one will degenerate. Degenerate. Later, that one degenerate. Okay? Yes? Have you understood? Pollen grain. One more time I will say. Pollen grain reach the right stigma and begin to the germinate. Pollen grain enter on the stigma. After that, pollen grain forms a small tube-like structure called pollen tube. The pollen tube which emerges through the germ pores. The content of pollen grain move into the tube. The pollen grain move into the tube. Through the tube, the pollen grain is going. Pollen tube grow through the tissues of stigma and style and finally reaches the ovule through the micropyle. The pollen tube through that pollen grain going and reaching the ovule through the micropyle. One hole is the micropyle. Through the micropyle, the stigma, the pollen is going inside the ovule. Inside the ovule, vegetative cell degenerate. Vegetative cells degenerate and generative cells divide into two sperm. Two sperms are there. One sperm fuses with the egg, that is syngamy. One sperm fuses with the egg, that is syngamy. After, the second sperm fuses with the secondary nucleus, triple fusion, that is triple fusion. That triple fusion to form a primary endosperm nucleus, which is triploid in nature. First one, diploid in nature. Second one, triploid in nature. Diploid zygote. Next one, triploid in nature. Two type of fusion, syngamy and triple fusion. Syngamy and triple fusion takes place. The embryo sac process the term double fertilization. Double fertilization is in the embryo sac. After triple fusion, primary endosperm nucleus develop into endosperm. Next, endosperm develop into endosperm. Endosperm provide food to a developing embryo. So, The later, the synergids and antipodal cells degenerate. Antipodal cells degenerate. Okay. Yes. Understood, children? Yes. One more time, you see the parts. Pollen grains are coming on the stigma. Yes, that is a pollen grain. Style. Pollen tube. The pollen grain only making the tube. That is a pollen tube. Okay. In the fertilization process, the micropyle is the small hole. After that, synergids are there, antipodals are there. Some nucleus, secondary nucleus, antipodals, and the synergids are in the embryo. That is embryo sac, egg, integument. One micropyle is there. Male gametes. Male gametes enter into the female gametes. Okay. Yes, children, that pollen grain going in through the micropyle and enter into the ovule, producing fuses, syngamy, and triple fusion that make a double fertilization. Double fertilization, the triple fusion primary endosperm nucleus develop into endosperm. Endosperm provide food to developing embryo. After synergids, antipodal cells degenerate. Okay. Significance of fertilization. What are the signification? The ovary to develop into fruit. See the picture? It is outer that is a ovary. Outer that is a ovary. Ovary to develop into fruit. Okay. They help in development of new characters from two different individuals. Two characters, two individuals. Okay. We have to see post-fertilization changes. Post-fertilization changes. Post-fertilization changes. One is ovule develop into the seed. Ovule develop into the seed. Ovule develops into the seed. Second one, the integument of the ovule develop into seed coat. Integument of the ovule. Integument of the ovule develop into seed coat. Ovule develop into fruit. Integument of ovule develop into seed coat. The integument of ovule develop into seed coat. Ovary enlarges and develop into a fruit. Ovary enlarges and develop into the fruit. That is a post-fertilization changes. The seed contains the future plant or embryo which develop into seedling under the appropriate condition. 3 points given here. Ovule develop into fruit. The integuments of ovule develop into seed coat. Ovary develop into fruit. Ovary develop into fruit. Okay. These are the post-fertilization changes. Okay, children. Have you understood? This is very simple one only. Here, what is pollination we studied? Transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma of flower is called pollination. Types of pollination: self-pollination, cross-pollination. Yes, what is self-pollination? Transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of same flower. Cross-pollination, transfer of pollen from one flower to another flower of the different flowers, different plants. Okay. Advantages, disadvantages are studied. Agents of cross-pollination. What are the agents? Pollination by wind, anemophily, pollination by insect, entomophily, pollination by water, hydrophily, and pollination by animals, zoophily. These all we studied. After fertilization in plants, that also how that pollen grain enter into the ovule, how that fuse, that we studied. Okay, yes, your homework, take 10 fill in the blanks, take 10 fill in the blanks, read properly and make 10 fill in the blanks. Okay, after draw and write about fertilization in plants. That is your assignment. Draw neatly, write and keep assignment in your file. 1 week, one time you submit your assignment. Okay, not now, when sir will say, that time you submit your assignment. That is a important one, that give, and we will give mark for assignment also. So you study this lesson properly. Okay, children.